What's up, guys? It's Midwestern Marks here. I'm Eddie.
And I'm Carlos.
Yeah, we're doing another interview today, trying to give a platform to another activist. We're here with Briana. She's the chair of the local Democratic Socialist organization in our area, and we're just going to ask her a few questions. And yeah, Carlos is going to start with the first question here.
So to start it off, kind of tell us who you are. Eddie mentioned you're the chair of Dubuque Democratic Socialist. So, I mean, before we get to that part, kind of tell us who you are and maybe what brought you to that and to activism.
Okay, sure. My name is Briana Moss. A lot of people call me Bree. I grew up in Dyersville, which is a small town in Iowa right off of Highway 20, about a 30-minute drive west of Dubuque. Home of the Field of Dreams, if that rings a bell for anybody. So yeah, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 12 years old, which is 6th grade. And I remember my mom, single parent, she had a job working in a factory, still does, member of a union. And I remember, even though my mom had good health insurance through the union, we still struggled to pay for my supplies. So even at a young age, I was aware of some of the healthcare struggles that people go through. And then as I got older, when it was eventually no longer allowed on my mother's health insurance plan, I found out that I was eligible for Medicaid. And then, that's a whole another can of worms as far as struggling and fighting with health insurance companies. And that is partly what motivated me to become active in my community and in politics. I'd say back in 2015, when I first heard about Bernie Sanders, was kind of what really got me motivated. That was what helped me to realize that it wasn't my fault that I couldn't afford my insulin, and that it wasn't my fault that I couldn't afford insurance premiums and copays. It really opened my eyes to the fact that nearly everyone is struggling in a similar way with healthcare. And so that really gave me a lot of hope, realizing that I'm not alone and that it's not a personal failing of my own. So that was when I met up with my fellow Dubuque Democratic Socialists. We had a book club, and everything just kind of snowballed from there. We've been growing ever since we started in 2016. And I've been involved. This past January, I was elected as the chair. And so right now we are focusing our energy on Medicare for all this year as an entire group. And yeah, it's been quite an experience, a learning experience.
Cool. Yeah, so given that you've had that firsthand experience with the broken healthcare system, and that, is the main issue you guys are focusing on right now, I guess, what's the best step we can take right now to move towards a Medicare for all system or a universal healthcare system, given that we're looking at a Joe Biden or Donald Trump presidency? What is the best step, in your opinion, that we can take here in Dubuque or elsewhere?
Well, I've been working a lot with not only DSA, but National Nurses United as well. And they have a big Medicare for All campaign going on. So I would highly recommend getting in touch with National Nurses United. They are a great support system. They make it really easy to get plugged in, get all the education you need, all the resources, all the support. Not only that, but we need to be having conversations with our friends and family and neighbors. Luckily, healthcare is a really easy issue to talk to people about, because whether you're Republican or Democrat, everybody has a healthcare story. And so I think a big part of our fight for Medicare for All is really making those deep connections with our family and our friends and our neighbors, and you know, even your doctors and your nurses that you see, and you know, get personal and vulnerable with them, tell them your story, get to know their story, because you know, it's not like facts don't change people, as I've learned the hard way. I've spent time, you know, like memorizing and reading and, you know, learning as much as I can about Medicare for All and how it would work. And as beneficial as it is to know that info, it's not necessarily always what moves people. So I think the most important thing is to be vulnerable with people, and to make that connection, and then obviously educate people about Medicare for All. There are a lot of misconceptions out there. I mean, a lot of lies being spread, obviously. And so National Nurses United makes it really easy with providing like simple fact sheets and stuff where you can easily debunk people and their doubts that they have about Medicare for All. So the work that specifically that Medicare for All is doing is obviously doing like organizing with making connections and educating people, getting more people in support of Medicare for All. We collect petition signatures, which is kind of difficult to do right now, but not impossible. And then another kind of aspect that they're taking is pushing resolutions in favor of Medicare for All across the country. You can go to the National Nurses United website, and they have a map of all the cities and counties who have passed Medicare for All resolutions. So that's really exciting. It's something that we're going to be working on here in Iowa alongside Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement. So hopefully we'll see something in Dubuque sooner than later. Either a city or a county resolution in support of Medicare for All. But that's another very beneficial action that people can take. And again, National Nurses United provides you with all the help and support that you need to do all of this. So,
Cool.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's
pushing it in the House and the Senate. So,
I think that's very important what you mentioned. Especially, I was able to work with the Bernie campaign in 16 and in 20, and I remember in 16 I would approach people just with facts, and as soon as you do that, they're like closed, right? And in 20 they figured out the strategy that that starting with the story works a lot better. And then what I found canvassing was that when you, regardless of who you're talking to, when you open up with a story and with vulnerability, their shields come down, and then you can hammer it in with the facts. But that's very good. So
And
in
you'll
terms
find Trump supporters too. You'll find people who you'd think would never be open to that message, but their parent got sent to war or something and came back and then had no health care and wasn't taken care of at all. You know, this is based off, you know, real people I've talked to. And like, you're not going to reach those people so much by explaining the cost and the efficiency of it. But if you reach them on that personal level, it's, you know, you do have a chance to get them voting the right way, at least.
right, yeah, or at
funny
least
because those like right-wing folks are like constantly sort of spewing the Ben Shapiro facts don't care about your feelings, but when you talk to them, it's that element of feeling that really is able to make a way to communicate with them.
right. Yeah, I've even had conversations with people who tell me that they love President Trump and they love our governor, Kim Reynolds. But then they have the same healthcare worries as me, and you know, they wish that people would wear their masks, and you know, they worry about getting their prescriptions. So yeah, I feel like it's a good way to talk to people without having those kind of preconceived Republican versus Democrat notions.
For sure.
And it's one of those things where the dichotomy in the U.S. between like Democrat Republic and Republican, which is a split between like liberal socially and conservative socially, economically, they're both the same or very similar. It this topic of Medicare for all seems to be one of those things that if the establishment on both parties are not accepting it, and it's such a basic thing, like every other country in the world that considers themselves capitalist as well has, you know, some sort of universal healthcare for their citizenry. So it's one of those good starting points to let people realize that, you know, maybe this sort of American exceptionalism is not so true if our citizenry doesn't have basic healthcare and we have millions of people uninsured and underinsured. In terms
Right.
of activism, what do you see the role of an organization like DSA, both in terms of like right now locally in Dubuque and more generally in the US? I know the Dubuque chapter is kind of focusing on the movement towards Medicare for all, but how would you sort of relate the sort of relations that are going on with different DSA chapters and just DSA overall?
I've only been chair since January, and with COVID and everything just being insanely different and weird, I'm not too involved with DSA like on a national level, I guess. But it seems to me that that DSA is pretty well divided up into different efforts. Like, you know, they've got their Medicare for all activists and their housing justice and all the different issues. And so one thing that we kind of learned from with our small local Dubuque chapter was that, at least for us, dividing our efforts like that wasn't the most efficient way, like use of our energy and time. So that's why we this year decided to like focus solely on Medicare for all. Sorry, I feel like I'm ill-equipped to answer this question. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I was
Louis
gonna
might be
ask.
better at that than me.
What's that?
I said Louis might have a better answer to all that than me.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask what you would change about DSA or anything if what you wanted, like if you were in charge of DSA at a national level, I guess would you want them to focus on one specific issue and focus all their organizational efforts on that? Do you think they spread themselves too thin, or I'm not sure.
I don't know that it's necessarily that they spread themselves too thin, but speaking like from my own personal feelings and experience with DSA, it does feel like overwhelming sometimes, because it feels like they expect, like, you just get email after email and webinar after webinar, and that's great, that's awesome. But I feel like to someone like me, that just gets overwhelming, where I'm like, it's too much. So I think that, like, in some ways it might be better for them for DSA as a national to kind of like streamline things. Like as far as, for example, I know like with Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement, they will categorize like their contacts so that they know, like, okay, who's interested in healthcare, who's interested in racial justice, who's interested in the environment. And then rather than like bombarding people with action after action, it's more focused so that, I guess, in my opinion, so that people don't feel overwhelmed, like they, you know, it's hard to find a place to start when there's like so much on your plate, I guess. And I feel like that's been helpful with the Dubuque chapter too, as far as like kind of narrowing things down. But I think at the national level, that I think that we definitely do have the capacity to like be doing all these different actions at once. But I think they just need to kind of like get it, I don't know, focused a little more so that they know like which members are super passionate about which issues, because I think that would go a long way in helping people feel better about like getting their foot in the door with activism. I think a lot of people don't want to take that first step because they're scared or nervous, and you know, like for me, I'm not like, okay, factory farms, you know, like yeah, I care, but I'm not as knowledgeable and you know like not willing to get off my butt for that. Whereas I think it would be an easier way to get people motivated if you were to like hit them from the start what really is personal to them.
Right, because it's hard to get up and knock doors or volunteer your time, you know, especially everyone's so busy. So that makes sense that you would want to hit them with something that they're passionate about. Like we were just talking about, people respond best to stuff that they can personalize. So I think that's a really good insight there.
Yeah, and I think just to tie it back to, I think your first answer, when you sort of go with that angle of what people personally care about, you're able to realize that it's also not just a personal thing. When they're able to look around and see how many people care about the same issue and how many people are being affected by those same issues, there seems to be an element of truth in there, and how there's this collective experience, even with this particular point or that particular point, and being able to tie all of the particular things that are affecting people and sort of analyze them holistically and see where they stem from. That really sort of creates the possibility of power and of creating, as opposed to movements, organizations. So Kwame Ture, one of the things he focuses on is the difference between movements that are just focused on sort of one particular issue, and organization, which you know, it has focuses on issues, but is able to connect them and see their systemic root and fight against that. Do you, now that since we touched that sort of the structure that DSA has of sort of the particular issues, and really trying to hammer down people in different fields, do you see that there's an effort to sort of tie it all together, in the sense of being able to connect all of those particular issues and how they stem from capitalism and what we can do about that collectively?
Again, I haven't like been closely involved with DSA at a national level, but like from what I'm gathering, like obviously I think that DSA people know that like all these issues are interconnected, but I don't necessarily see that being like voiced. Whereas like with Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement, for example, I feel like they do a really good job of, like I said, they have their different, like they have their racial group and their healthcare group and their environmental group, but they're really good about, you know, like this group has an action coming up and we all need to come together to support them. You know what I mean? Like they'll have their small planning organizing team, but then when we need more numbers and more people power, they're really awesome about getting everybody on board. And I feel like with our local DSA chapter, that was something that we struggled with, was people getting burnt out and feeling like, well, I'm working on this, but this group needs help over here, and like we didn't have enough people. And so I feel like maybe the issue with DSA is that everyone is so, like, obviously all the chapters are so spread apart, and it's like all over the country. I think we could all take a page out of CCI's book, because they're able to gather everyone from across the state, you know, when these big actions are needed. And that's, I don't know, it's just amazing the way that they're able to inspire people and bring them together. Like yeah, I'm in healthcare. I care about the environment, but I'm not like super passionate about it. But they're still able to get like all their members to turn up to help this group with their environmental action. So I feel like that's kind of like the end goal, is to have something in place like that. But with DSA, I don't see that same like solidarity, ironically. Like even within Iowa, with all of our separate Iowa chapters, it's sometimes difficult to get everybody together for like one big event. And again, all the chapters, like we're doing healthcare, other chapters are focusing on housing, you know, like it's all very different. But yeah, I feel like building solidarity is the biggest thing that everyone could work on.
Yeah, and
question. I feel like I was rambling.
No, that's good. No, I would add to that too, solidarity and also like taking action. Like you can't be afraid to go protest. You can't be afraid to knock doors, especially if there's a, you know, opportunity to get someone like Bernie Sanders in office like we had. Like a lot of people like to read a lot, which is great, you know, read, educate yourself, but there's definitely a fear of actually getting out there and you know, organizing movements against the ruling class in this country. So
Right.
Yeah,
and I think like what's amazing with CCI is how they're able to get all these people, these huge numbers of people to turn out to things. And I think it's partly because CCI has the receipts to back it up. Like they have wins, you know, on their resume. They've stopped several factory farms from being built here in Iowa. Yeah, they've got tons of awesome stuff that they've accomplished. And so I feel like part of the reason that they're able to turn out these huge numbers of people is that people know that it's going to be a success. Like I feel like here in Dubuque, a lot of times it's hard to get people to show up because they feel like, oh, nobody's going to be there. It's not going to be like a big thing. It's not going to result in anything. But for example, when we had our Black Lives Matter rallies here, like I couldn't believe how many people showed up. And it was because it was happening all over the country. They saw other, you know, rally after rally, riot after riot, and they felt passionate and they felt like it was something concrete. And so I think that's another thing that we need to work on to get people, like, people are more likely to get active when they feel like there's a chance for them to win. And right now, people don't feel that way.
Yeah, and that, again, like you said, that comes with offering something concrete, not just offering like lofty ideals. And this can be tied to the election now. People don't get excited with the Democratic Party. They don't really offer anything that's not just getting Trump out of office, especially in a time when I think 40 million Americans lost their jobs. It's going to be hard to win an election against his sort of fake right-wing populism when you're not offering anything.
And especially now that Bernie's no longer
in
the picture, so to speak. Yeah, that's like an extra hurdle for us to get over because people are really upset and discouraged about that, and understandably so. But yeah, I think it's about, like we said, building solidarity and camaraderie, and like realizing that we're in the same boat together. And
yeah, the election is what it is at this point, but you know, I feel like the more time we spend talking about it, almost the more time we're wasting, where we could be educating people about Medicare for all, whatever it is, maybe getting them ready for the next election cycle, or just, you know, getting them more active in their communities, building that solidarity. So thank you, Bree, for your time. I think that's all we have, unless you had anything else, Carlos.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Oh, you did?
yeah, no, it's kind of a plug question.
Okay.
For anyone watching that shares a similar story and that wants to get involved, what sort of organizations would you recommend them to look into? I know you mentioned CCI, Nurses United, DSA, but what would you recommend someone that wants to get involved right now?
Yeah, I would definitely look and see if you have a local DSA chapter anywhere near you. If you're in Iowa, Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement is an awesome group. There are other similar groups to CCI in other states. Like for example, if you're in Minnesota, I know there's a Take Action Minnesota. Or there's also, there might be groups in different states called People's Action. There's Student Action, and then yeah, National Nurses United. And there's also a separate group called Medicare for All Resolutions. And they're obviously like specifically focusing on passing Medicare for All resolutions. So yeah, and then I don't know, people can always feel free to contact me if they want to get involved. I'm used to like sending out emails, about if people want info about Medicare for All or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Always happy to reach out to someone, and yeah.
Excellent. We'll drop some of those links in the video, so we'll plug that. And if you don't mind, we could also put your email or something for anyone that's interested in contacting you about getting active either in Dubuque or elsewhere. Anything you would like to finish with, Eddie?
Well, I just want to say, like, with CCI, we're really focusing on deep canvassing, and so I just think that's really what we need to be focusing on is making those connections and focusing on emotion and feeling rather than facts, and just make people realize that they have a stake in this too. It's just that sometimes people don't know it yet.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time and thank you for all that you do.
Yeah, guys.
Thank you, Bree. We appreciate it. Thank you all for watching. If you want to get involved, I'll have the links in the bio or whatever that's called for YouTube. So, yeah.